It's Sunday morning, engine back. Well, this is the first time car and engine have ever met, because although that did have a T16 Turbo in it, it wasn't that one. The transfer went pretty well. A couple of minor casualties. The stainless pipe has ruined my nice black paint on my inlet, and my grubby hands have also ruined my nice black paint on my inlet, so I'll have to repaint that before it goes together. What I want to do today is stick that adapter plate on the block, then I can fit my flywheel and clutch, then I can time it up properly, finish off this end. The turbo, I'm still waiting for bits and pieces for that, so I can't really do a lot with the turbo, but I can certainly continue putting on ancillary bits. I'm going to pull the old water pump off. I haven't got a new one yet. There's a lot of different pumps, and I don't really know what the actual differences are. If you look at aftermarket listings, pretty much one pump will do everything. If you look at Rimmer Brothers or the Rover parts catalogues, it says they're all application specific, so I don't really know what the differences are. But anyway, yeah, probably not going to do that much videoing. I'm just going to put stuff together, talk it up as it should be, with reference to the workshop manual, which I'll have on there. Rather helpfully, the engine manual actually includes the Torx for the adapter plate as well. So the Torx heads bolts, the 4 around the crank, they're 45 Newton meters, and then the top 2 that go into the block, they're 90. I'm not actually sure whether they're completely independent or whether they're part of the gearbox, but I'll go and have a look in a minute. I'm not really sure where I've got to on the different videos, or quite how much detail I've got into about the different fuck-ups I've made and some of the descriptions. I did have a lightened flywheel to go on this, but it turned out it was actually for a normally aspirated engine, and therefore a smaller diameter clutch. So my new clutch kit wouldn't fit, so I've reverted back to the original turbo flywheel, which is probably no bad thing because it's still got the locating dowels in it. I know it's been balanced, and I know my clutch is going to fit. The other day when I was in the garage and I realised I didn't have a flywheel, so couldn't lock the crank in the right place to do the timing belt, I mistakenly thought that mark there on the flywheel aligned with the top cover that goes in here, and I'd set my cams to them, which was wrong. So I had to take the timing belt back off again, put the flywheel on, lock it in position, which you do using that little hole there, and it goes into a little recess on the back of the flywheel. That locks the crank in the correct position. Then I timed up my cams properly, so inlet lines up with exhaust, and when you put a straight edge across these markings, they all kind of line up. Put the tensioner in, I've given it a couple of rotations, and it all still lines up again, so I'm pretty happy with that. So now I can take the crank pulley back off, put all the timing covers back on. I'm still missing the top cover, which is annoying because I didn't know I was missing that. So then I can torque up the crank bolt, and then on this end I can finally put my clutch on, and then think about even putting the gearbox on. Okay, so this end's about as far as I can do at the moment. I still don't have a top cover. The timing belt's all done, tensioned up, crank bolt is in and torqued up, spark plugs are in and torqued up. They were pre-gapped, but I just checked them again. Flywheel's on, so yeah, after lunch I'll do the clutch. Then I'll go dig out the gearbox, change the seals, clean it off, and get ready to put that on. A little bit more progress. Clutch is on, gearbox is down there. Got a pair of new seals to go in, and general clean-up really. That is a PG1 from a 220 turbo with a Type A LSD in it, torque biasing one, Torsen, whatever you want to call it. Allegedly good condition. I do have a brand new Type B. The idea is to put this in, run the car, see what it's like, and then if that gearbox is knackered, take it out, change the bearings, get it refurbed, put type B in it, put it back together again. So yeah, consequently at this stage I'm not doing a great deal other than new clutch and new release bearing and new seals. Gearbox is on, not properly. I'm struggling with nuts and bolts and things. Some of them are metric fine, but they're a bit mangled, so I don't really want to reuse them. That mount is on, but the one at the back is a bit of a puzzle at the moment. I still can't quite work out what's going on. Ultimately, that'll sit through there, easy. Quite what else goes on in and around here of all these other lugs and bits and pieces and threads, I don't really know. So yeah, might be a bit more internet research perhaps. Kind of got about as far as I can with putting the box and bits and pieces back together. I just run out of the right bolts, so I need to order up some. I've put the coil pack back on with the original HT leads, and now for a final bit of bling before I clean up, I'm going to fit my, where are they, nice new Magnacore leads. Oops. These are made by Evelina, with little happy smiley faces, so hopefully they're not going to fuck up. Every fucking time. So I ordered these a while ago. I said they're definitely the right ones for the wasted spark engine, aren't they? And they said, oh yeah, absolutely, blah blah blah. I've never bothered really opening the box and checking, but basically they're not. These are the ones for the coil, the distributor engine. Consequently, they don't fit the coil because the coil end should look like that itty bitty thing to pick up on that stud there. These are to go on the distributor. So once again, project stalls because people don't know what they're on about, and I haven't checked boxes before I've got to the stage of wanting to fit them. I really could just throw a match on this thing now. I'm just so fucked off with it. It's a couple of days since I last did a video. It's Tuesday or Wednesday night, I can't even remember now. I scuttled the engine in out of the way. I've ordered some new correct leads this time, and I'll sell the other ones on Facebook, hopefully get some of my money back. I have bought new nuts and bolts from Rimmer Brothers for some of the areas that I wasn't sure where they went, and replaced a couple of the other crappy looking ones with nice shiny new ones. I still need to figure out the bolt arrangement at the back, but I do know, now understand how this mount goes on. This sits on those two, and then my new Vibratech mount will go through that bit, and then I'll have the, I think it's called a dog bone, I've got that around somewhere, and then that will go between, where is it, there, that bit, and the mounting in the car there. So that will make sense. Bought some special lock nuts from Driftworks for the turbo, because in my experience, in fact I think on my black Nissan I've actually welded it. So I've done the nuts up, torqued them, and then I've tack welded them. I'm not going to do this on this one because at least it's in the front of the engine, so access isn't too bad. But yeah, lock nuts, not copper, these are steel, zinc plated, but they are like aero bolts, so they have a mechanical locking in them. Problem with lock washers and stuff like that is that they get affected by the heat and they lose their tensile properties. I don't know whether tensile is the correct word, but basically they don't behave like lock washers anymore, unless they're the serrated ones. Anyway, I'm rambling, so I'm just going to crack on and fit stuff. Oh yeah, new water pump as well. I'm still just bolting in things as I find them. Got that bracket on, got most of the bolts in, I think. Still slightly confused as to what goes in down here. They're metric fine, like M12 by 1.25, but all the bolts I have are really long and they're just not working. And then these two here, I don't know whether there's actually meant to be something there or not. I can't see anything in the photos. It might be in another application, in another rover, because these boxes were in loads of them, that those get used. I don't know. That's where the speedo sensor goes. This one had this kind of pickup in it. Presumably would have taken a drive cable, whereas that car is an electric one. So I've bought hopefully what is the right one, speedo pinion, and it's listed for MGFs, Rover 200s, Rover 25s, right up until the MGZRs, where they started using the ABS wheel speed sensors for the speedo. Whereas I think this car, and I'm not 100% sure, so excuse me, right, look at this. Yeah, it's a conventional electric one, and then there's some sort of pulse thing, trigger thing that screws on top, which is the actual transducer and sort of sender unit. This is literally the jobby that takes the motion of the gearbox and sends it up to the transducer. Finally, looks like that comes on the new O-ring as well, so that can go in the box. Then I just need to wait for the transducer to turn up, and I've bought one, and hopefully that'll send the pulses. And then my understanding of what I've read so far is that the cluster actually takes the pulses and then works out what to do with them. So it'll do something. Whether or not it gives the right speed will probably depend on what wheels and all the rest of it, but we'll find out later on. I finally worked out where those two longer fine pitch bolts go. They actually go through that mount and then to the underside of the box, and then that bit connects to that bushing, which goes to the front subframe. When I went on the Vibratech engine mounts website, it said that actually when you fit these stiffer engine mounts, you don't actually need any of these additional arms, which is probably true, but I'm going to fit them anyway because I've got them here. They're all powder coated nicely, and really I don't like the idea of actually just having these engine mounts in shear. So there's nothing apart from, well, I guess it's overkill really. I mean, they're pretty damn chunky, but I don't know. I've got them, so I'm fitting them, and if it causes a problem then I'll pull them out later, but I can't imagine it would. The other benefit, or the other reason for doing it, is it actually holds the gearbox to that plate, and at the minute I don't actually have any shorter bolts that will work, so at least with this fitted it'll all hold it together nicely. I've just pulled the old water pump out. It actually appears to be an original, because that is an original MG Rover one, and they are basically identical impellers, and I think all the casting marks are the same. So that feels actually really nice. So apart from surface rust where it's been sat, other than that it's really good. But anyway, I'll clean up the housing and I can install my new one, clean up the cover, put the cover back on, and I can put the power steering pump in the other side. I haven't done a lot of videoing today because it's not been going particularly well, as per most of this project, and this last little bit has been rather scary because that is one big chunk of engine and box to fit in here. So I've been taking my time, being really careful. I've had rags across the paint, so far I don't think I've scratched it, but Jesus Christ, that is, you know, millimetre either side and you're ruining lovely fresh paintwork. So not the easiest job in the world, particularly when you're by yourself. So front mount is roughly aligned, well, it is aligned. Rear one, again, that's aligned and on there. This one though, the whole engine needs to come across in this way. I've actually done that mount up, so I probably should loosen that off a bit and then align it that way. So I'll do that now before I damage anything. That was hard work, but it's in, sitting on its nice Vibratech engine mounts. I hope I didn't scratch the paint. I don't think I did. Good. that looks all right that side. I was a bit worried about that turret, but that's all good. That's just rust that got painted over, sadly, but there we go. Oh. Yeah, that's good. I have dummy mounted the turbo on the front there, but I'm getting increasingly irritated by just little things that just piss me off. So I ordered the fitting kit, which came with that adapter to go into the block. It came with the little braided hose to go into the oil feed, but the I didn't have the right adapter for the oil feed, so I rang a supplier. They told me that it was either 7/16 or M12 fine pitch 1.25, and it was basically 7/16 UNF, but I've then ordered an adapter, but two things. One is it bottoms out in the bottom of there before the copper washer has got a chance to seal. The other thing is it's -4 rather than -3, so it won't fit on to my pipe, so I've had to order another one, and hopefully that will come here soon. But otherwise I'm left waiting. And then the other question I've got, which I haven't yet resolved, is which turbo actuator should I be using? That's the little one off the T25 turbo. That's the bigger one off the T28. Basically all these do is the more boost you get, the more the boost pressure acts on the top side of the diaphragm, overwhelms the spring, pushes the rod out, which opens the wastegate, so that rather than the outgoing exhaust gases going through the turbine wheel and creating more pressure in the compressor side, it basically vents out, bypasses it. But the two diaphragms inside there are obviously different diameters, which will have one effect, and then they've probably got different rate springs inside, so I don't know what these are rated at. I don't want silly power, which makes me think I should probably go with whatever was standard on the T25, but I don't know. So the other option is I spunk 100 quid or so and buy a forge billet actuator, which I can then select what springs and piston type that I want, which I'll be pissing in the wind because I have absolutely no bloody idea, but hopefully somebody who tunes these cars, and it is my intention once this is done to take it to somebody who knows what they're on about, and they can set things up like the dump valve and the actuator pressure. So yeah, a good step forward, but still plenty more to do. Plenty of parts still missing, like the water feed. I've got the water outlet from the turbo, and I've got the oil drain. The oil inlet, I think I will have the parts arriving soon, but the coolant in to the core goes through that pipe there, and the end, well, it was basically bent. Like this whole turbo came with the engine, it's been smashed around a lot, so that was bent, and then when I tried to straighten it, it just fractured. So I need to get myself another way of feeding water to the core. It might be that I take that one off, clean it up, weld a union on the end of there, and then try and bead it, or I might try and buy another pipe or find out what fittings they are and then make them out of banjos and braided hose or something. Ooh, right, I'm gonna go cook some dinner. I've lost my way again in what I was filming when, largely because my GoPro is dead. My iPhone, which is actually really good for videoing, now for some reason won't let me copy video from the iPhone memory back into a computer, which is really irritating. Basically I'm still waiting for connectors to arrive for the turbo. Engine's in, need to find the steady bar that goes in there. I have decided that I will use it purely because I've got it. The inlet, I have decided to fit an earlier one. They're the same design, but it just says turbo there, purely for vanity reasons, no other reasons. Wiring is a complete ball ache because it turns out fitting a wasted Spark 800 loom into one of these is problematic. I won't go into the details because I still haven't worked it out yet. Power steering, that's a success. We now have a high pressure line from the pump down to the area of the rack needs to be buttoned up in a couple of places, but otherwise that's good. I have the hose to do the low pressure inlet to the pump, and I've got a hose, or two hoses actually, that will probably just about work to do the low pressure return from the body of the rack to the reservoir. I just need to finish terminating it. Anyway, oh yeah, alley radiator to go in instead of the original. The frame is away, being powder coated or blasted and then powder coated. And then over here we have my front swivel hub assemblies. I don't know whether I'm ever going to bother uploading it, but basically I took these to work, pumped out the old wheel bearings, pumped new ones in. There are a few problems along the way, so if this is a repeat then apologies, but yeah, I managed to screw up the installation of one of them by pumping the hub into the bearing, forgetting that of course it's free to just pump the inner race out the back, so I had to do one of them twice before I learnt my lesson. But yeah, new wheel bearings all installed nicely. So I'm just going to use up some more of that enamel black that I used on the engine block to paint these up. They're all degreased and cleaned, looking lovely. They just need a coat of black paint. In Barney Bunny news, I did actually just feed him. I didn't bother recording it, but he's down on his little pinnacle outcrop surveying the scene, suitably fed. There are other bunnies around, but they're not friendly like that one. So those can dry or cure, whatever you want to call it. Over here we have some other bits back from the powder coaters. That is the fuel filter bracket, sorry, sits on the bulkhead. Some radiator mounts, top ones, some random relay holder. I don't even know if I need that, but electrical connectors and relays, that screws to the bulkhead somewhere. That's the big brackety thing for the ABS module or control unit valve block. Then over here we have the turbo inlet. I had options on this. I could have had it shot peened to close all the pores, and that would have left it with a nice shiny finish, but it still would have corroded. So my plan is to just etch prime it, paint it black, probably in gloss, and then sand through to expose the turbo and that machined edge, because this is off a 420 or a 220 turbo. The ones on the 800s just said injection. It's exactly the same shape and everything. The only other slight difference is this has a port for the vacuum line with a like a plastic moulded plug that just pops in there, whereas the one for that inlet, if I can find it, it's basically a banjo bolt fitting. I can't find it now, but it'll be around somewhere. There it is. So it just has a banjo union on the end rather than a push fit. We have our first coat of acid etch primer. I would have normally just done normal primer, but since it's bare metal, I figured I'd use etch. Going over the top now with some matte black engine enamel from a rattle can. That's looking halfway decent. Hopefully it will stay that way and the paint won't react. I'll probably have to give it another coat, but yeah, once it's really dry and cured, I'll get some sandpaper and a flat block and hopefully sand back to nice shiny alley under there. Got some more stuff back from the powder coaters. I should say blasters and powder coaters. So that's the rad frame. That's another part of the radiator frame. That is the header tank bracket that goes on the bulkhead. So I can go and find the header tank and then bolt that lot in. Old header tank, dirty, stained, yucky and horrible. New header tank, new old stock, never been used, never been fitted on anything, still has an MG logo on the bottom. And I'm spoiling this car because I'm doing little things like stainless steel fittings instead of mild steel, and I know everyone says that it will corrode together, but generally, as long as you're not in a salt environment, it's not the end of the world, especially with little fixings like this. Obviously anything structural can't be stainless, it's all mild, but anyway, that on there should look rather nice. Over on the paint rack we have my inlet manifold that has now fully gone hard. It's matte, well it's meant to be matte, but it's come out satin, but that looks really rather good. I'm not even sure whether I'm going to bother sanding through that to reveal the turbo a bit more. I might actually leave it black, it just looks a little bit more low-key, which I quite like. Over here we have the stabiliser links. These are the original rover ones. People tell me, and the Vibratech website tells me, that if you use the Vibratech engine mountings you don't actually need these, but I'm fitting them anyway. That is the one for the rear, that is the one for the offside, the one for the lower front middle is actually already in the car. So the one for the upper rear goes between the subframe and the mounting between the block and the gearbox, so that big adapter plate, so it just sits in there. The Vibratech one is right next door and it's dead stiff. Then at the front we've got the other Vibratech mount and the dog bone underneath, which still has a spanner hanging off it because I can't find the right bolt. And then on this side, that other little short stubby one goes between here and that bracket and then onto the Vibratech. That's, you know, one of the reasons I'm fitting it's because you've got this big fixture in the engine bay and nothing bolted to it, so if all the bits are plug and play you might as well just do it. So that's my thoughts anyway. Also I'm using the 620 Ti sump and part of the gearbox bolts actually go through the bracket down there. I'm not sure if you can see it. So, where are we? Yeah, that whole mount thing there clips to the dog bone, which clips to the subframe, and the bolts for the gearbox to the block go through it. So I basically either had to have shorter bolts or fit that bit, and if I was going to fit that bit I might as well fit the final link and tie it into the front subframe like so. So basically that engine is not going to be coming out of there anytime soon, which is good because it's probably going to be about 220-230 horsepower with an LSD in a little front wheel drive car, so we don't want the engine just launching its way out the front of the engine bay.